Thursday night, Steele and Vance. Here we go.
Fast week.
Fast week and so much to get to. We almost need 2 hours.
I know. We were going to start by, joking around about our thoughts on the Super Bowl, and we'll get to that in a second. But then crazy, the shooting. I couldn't believe it. I'm watching CNN. I'm going like, oh, there's been another mass shooting in the U.S. This one was at the tail end of the Super Bowl parade in Kansas City. And a couple of young people, juveniles with guns, had some sort of a dispute and shot 20 people, one person dead. A bunch of children shot.
And the woman who died, a radio host, hitting close to home, a young woman with nothing but her life ahead of us. And so many people saying, this is what America gets for having all the guns and da-da-da. But it's like the majority of Americans want common sense gun laws. And responsible gun owners, by the way, would not be showing up at an event this size and pulling out a gun in an open carry state.
Well, not to mention people say, the only thing that'll stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. There were 800 police officers there and they couldn't stop two bad guys with guns. So America's got to get its together, because they've had now 45 mass shootings and it's only February 15th.
It's
right?
Absolutely
it's crazy.
It's terrible. And of course we've seen the players, the Kansas City Chiefs, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes have all tweeted about this. And we want to be respectful of the tragedy that is. But we do want to get back to the parts of the show that are fun. And off the top, we usually talk about the fun thing. And yes, the Super Bowl was really fun to watch, and apparently a lot of people were watching it.
Yeah, for me, it wasn't so fun in the first half because I was cheering for Kansas City, and it wasn't a very interesting game in the first half. And then it got super interesting, and I was hopping up and down, and my husband was saying, "Sit down," and I was yelling. More people watched that game than the moon landing.
Yeah.
They said half of all Canadians were watching that game, a 65% increase in TSN's ratings.
And everybody was watching for this moment.
Yeah, well, that was Travis Kelce hugging his mom
Get over
first,
here, baby.
And Taylor Swift respectfully standing back to wait until he came to her. She didn't, elbow her way up on stage where they were getting the actual trophy. And there were other people up there, like the quarterback's wife and children were on stage. Yeah. She thought, no, she's going to just stand back. So I was worried that shooting at the Super Bowl parade had a connection to MAGA land, and because they were all mad at the Kansas City Chiefs. But
it was a plan. It was a Joe Biden plan. Well,
I loved this. Yeah, his comms
like
people.
We drew it up.
This is the dark Brandon thing, because of course MAGA world thought for sure that Taylor Swift is going to bring them down by telling all of her supporters and music fans to vote for the Democrats. She probably still will.
Clearly, she's bringing in the audience, so somebody's smart, and it looks like it's Taylor Swift who's smart, and maybe Travis Kelce for finding a fine young woman.
Yeah. We have our own kind of Super Bowl-ish type event, sporting event here, and this is the Invictus Games with some big guests in town today.
Today, right now, yes, the Duke and Duchess, Meghan Markle and her husband Prince Harry, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, are in town.
Did they keep their titles, or did they have to give them up?
Well, they give up the working royal title, but they can still, Sussex is their last name, and I'm told that it's still... She still goes by Duchess, but they're here for Invictus Games. Next week on the show, I'm very excited. Our good friend Scott Moore is going to join us. He is the new CEO of Invictus, Vancouver Whistler. Yeah. It's going to be a huge event. He's the guy who started Sportsnet, so no big deal. Scott Moore is going to be with us.
And we have a lot on this show.
Yes, we do.
So we have had a ton of... What?
Yes, viewing party first.
Oh, viewing party. Okay, go for it.
We got to talk about our viewing party prize, because this is a big one. You've actually enjoyed an Atlas Steakhouse meal.
It's incredibly fancy with smoking things and things that light on fire and all sorts of delicious things at Atlas.
$150 gift card. Yes, up for grabs, compliments of the BC RFA. And now we should talk about what's coming up on the show.
Okay, so we've talked about all the protests. There's just been so many in BC, and they're starting to get angrier, louder, more violent. It's a lot of bad behavior. And so Dr. Bonnie Henry was at a film festival in Victoria last week where they were showing a documentary around her time, dealing with COVID.
Yeah.
And the protesters were there and they were getting really messy, and it prompted the Victoria police chief to come out and say, you know what? People need to get a grip. It is your right to protest, but you need to calm down. So Chief Del Malnick is going to join us.
I cannot wait to speak with the chief on this subject. It's true, everybody does need to calm down, and you can disagree with respect. What's happening that it's so
Not these days,
polarizing?
apparently.
No. Well, Dr. Henry getting death threats since day one. And Mike Farnworth telling us that he never had a death threat. Never. It's really targeting women a lot here, and that's not to go. We've also got some real good fun to have today. Nashika, the artist that
Well, the
this
Canucks
jersey.
game is going to be big tonight because they're celebrating Black excellence. And there's the specialty jersey, which was designed by a local designer named Nashika. And there's a little bit of a video on what she's doing. No, we don't have it. Okay, we'll show you that a little bit later in the show.
Yeah, well, she'll be with us in studio. Later in the show, we've got all kinds of goodness coming up, but let's get to our
Hot headlines.
Hitting It. There it is. All right, where do we begin with the hot headlines? Richmond?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, they were debating whether they should see about bringing a safe consumption site into Victoria because, or Richmond
Hospital,
because they've had, something like 25 overdose deaths
In a year.
And oh my gosh, people just lost their minds, which connects back to this protesting. So, yeah, we're going to talk about that coming up because we have thoughts.
Mayor Malcolm Brody pushed back hard on the people that were screaming in his council session. So we will talk about that. Let's talk about this trafficker in Kelowna, houses of his
Well, you know
properties.
how the province has been going after these asset seizures for people who cannot prove where they got their wealth from to buy their mansion or their fancy cars or whatever. So there's one particular trafficker in Kelowna. They're going after 6 of his properties, and I say, do it. Other people say, this is unconstitutional, and I'm like,
Is it
hey,
though?
you know what? If you can prove, you should be able to prove where you got the money to buy 6 houses.
100%.
And if you can't,
well, the consequences have to come from somewhere, right? So, I mean,
in fact, we need more homes.
We do. Speaking of, because BC builds, there's a big push. We see it time and again. So many announcements, Linda. I'm a little tired of the
Well, it's
announcements.
because there's an election coming. Gee, imagine that, right? But the province realizes that especially the middle income people in this province can't afford to buy a house. They can't even afford rent. And so they're going to free up some public land and they're going to push a bunch of money in.
Good.
$2 billion low-cost loans, another $1 billion or so just in government funding to go in and build thousands of rental units that will be affordable to find that in this market, but still.
You know what AI won't be able to do? Build those houses. So skilled workers is a good idea moving forward with that injection of cash. Talking about, cutting edge technologies and green energy. A big thing with green energy is hydroelectric power. We're already talking about how we are in trouble.
Well, because we could be looking at another record drought situation, which is a disaster, and we need the water to fill the reservoirs to generate the power. And BC is in some trouble there. And so they are talking about a historic drought forecast.
We're going to stay on top of that story as well. Something breaking federally is this Arrive Can app controversy. Oh, Linda, this just blew off the tops of our heads, didn't it?
Well, it turns out that nobody was minding this story, and some small-ish company with a handful of employees ended up getting shoveled out $60 million to build an app that a lot of people said was a crappy app that didn't really work. And they had to, reimagine it a few times. But there were no invoices. Nobody kept track. There was no plan. There was no budget. And everybody's going, okay, $60 million, maybe a drop in the COVID bucket in terms of them shoveling out hundreds of billions. But that's 60 million tax dollars that could have been spent on housing.
So much.
Anything.
So much more.
Questions.
So again, we're going to follow up at that because there will be consequences, one would assume or hope to see. Consequences, like for maybe Donald Trump.
It's just my goal for 2024 is to see this man finally face some consequences. He says it's a witch hunt. Everybody's out after him. And I'm like, no, you shouldn't have committed all those crimes. So the first trial, I don't love this, but the first trial of his many, which is going out the gate March 25th, I believe, is the hush money trial, which was Donald Trump allegedly paying off porn star Stormy Daniels, who he was sleeping with while his wife was pregnant with their 5th child.
Oh, my God.
And then he tried to cover it up because they didn't want it to hurt his election chances.
Which is fraud.
That's the fraudulent election interference piece.
And I'm really feeling the tension. We talk about this, you and I, offline all the time. We talk about it here on the show. The tension around the inflated and out of line language that the former president uses, like saying things like, I'm going to let Russia do whatever the hell it wants to do. Like,
not going to protect the NATO allies.
Right.
That is insane. And world leaders are saying, you know what? We don't even know if America's got our back. It's got everybody, including Canada,
Yeah.
going, what does it mean? We need to all work together. And guess what? The last time they triggered the article where the Allies had to come to each other's defense was after 9/11, and they came to support America.
Right.
So Donald Trump is dangerous.
Two quick stories we want to get to about travel that happened this week. This is a kitchen table thing. The first one is weighing passengers now. This is a new...
It's the Finnish airline, Finnair, I think it is. And what they're doing is they're not trying to embarrass you. They're trying to sort of even out the loads on planes. So you have to get on a scale. Nobody can see the number except for the actual airline employees doing it. Oh. And I would think, could I take all my shoes off? Could I take my belt off, my coat and everything? I'll maybe be a half a pound lighter.
Or do you have to run to the bathroom a number of times before the flight takes off? This was quite the story. This made People magazine, this passenger being kicked off WestJet for excessive bathroom use. Turns out it's someone from right
journalist, Joanna Chu, and she had tummy issues. So right before the flight was leaving Mexico, she did go to the washroom a couple of times, and they asked her, and she just said, well, I'm not feeling great. And they said, get off the plane. And I think the reason they do it is because they don't want a mid-air situation,
for sure.
a medical situation, have to turn it around. But she was super mad, and her story is blowing up.
Made me think of blowing up. So later on in the show, stay with us. Victoria's Chief of Police will be joining us to discuss the increased tension in protests. And
up next, a heated public battle over a proposed safe injection site in Richmond shows just how divided we are when it comes to harm reduction for drug users.
And just before we go to break, let's look at our viewing party for this week. It starts with Cheryl in Comox. Cheryl, you're entered to win that Atlas gift certificate.
We have Eva in Nanaimo. Hello, Eva.
Hi, Eva. And Josie in Surrey. I love it. Thanks for taking pictures of yourselves watching us.
Also, Joyce in White Rock. Hello to you.
Viewing party at chekmedia.ca. It's brought to you by the BC Restaurant and Food Services Association. We're back in a moment.